The crystalline spires of the Galactic assembly stretched toward the artificial sky, their surfaces refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Zara Blackwood stood before the assembly chamber's towering doors, straightening her formal diplomatic uniform. After 15 years studying alien species across the galaxy, she never imagined she'd be here to defend humanity itself. The massive doors parted silently, revealing the circular chamber within. Hundreds of alien representatives occupied the tiered seating, their forms ranging from crystalline to gaseous to purely energy-based. At the chamber's center, First Speaker Nix's towering form dominated the podium. His iridescent scales shifted colors as he turned to regard her with 4 golden eyes. "Dr. Blackwood," his voice resonated through the chamber, "you stand before us to contest humanity's classification as a developing species. Please present your evidence." Zara activated her holoprojector, filling the chamber with images of human achievements. "Distinguished members of the Assembly, for 3 centuries you've classified humanity as a species requiring guidance and oversight. Today, I'll demonstrate why this classification is not only incorrect, but potentially dangerous for the Assembly itself." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Nix's scales flickered to a deeper blue. "Bold words, Doctor. What evidence could possibly support such a claim?" "Look at our history." Zara gestured to the holographic display. "Humanity has survived multiple extinction-level events, adapted to every environment on our planet, and developed faster than light travel independently. Yet the Assembly insists on treating us as primitives requiring supervision. Your species still wages war," a crystalline being chimed in. "You lack the unity that marks a truly advanced civilization." "With respect, Council Member," Zara countered, "our conflicts drive innovation. More importantly, they've taught us resilience. Humanity doesn't just survive. We adapt and thrive." First Speaker Nixis descended from his podium, his massive form towering over Zara. "You speak of adaptation. Yet your species remains physically weak compared to many Assembly members. How can you claim advancement when your very bodies are so limited?" Zara met his gaze steadily. "Our strength lies not in natural weapons or defenses, but in our minds and our will. We've turned our limitations into advantages. While other species evolved natural defenses, we learned to create. While others relied on physical strength, we developed technology and strategy." The chamber erupted in discussion as Zara displayed more data. "In the past decade alone, human colonies have survived attacks from space-faring predators, established trade routes through supposedly impassable regions, and developed technologies that even Assembly experts claimed were impossible. Impressive achievements," Nixis conceded, "but they also demonstrate why humanity requires oversight. Your species advances too quickly, too unpredictably. Or perhaps," Zara suggested, "you fear what we might become without your constraints." The chamber fell silent. Nix's scales shifted to a deep purple, a sign of either anger or intense interest. "Explain." "The Assembly's guidance has actually been containment," Zara said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You've restricted our expansion, limited our trade partnerships, and kept us from joining key technological exchanges. Yet despite these obstacles, humanity continues to advance. Imagine what we could achieve as true partners rather than subjects." Before Nixis could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. A holographic emergency message materialized. Multiple colonies along the galaxy's outer rim were under attack from an unknown force. Both human settlements and Assembly protectorates had gone dark. "This discussion must be postponed," Nixis declared. "The Assembly must address this crisis." "No," Zara stepped forward. "This is exactly why humanity deserves equal standing. Let us help. Let me prove what humans can do when we're treated as partners rather than primitives." Nixis studied her for a long moment, his scales cycling through colors as he considered. Finally, they settled on a deep gold. "Very well, Dr. Blackwood. You shall have your chance to prove humanity's worth. I will personally accompany you to the affected region. But be warned, if your species proves as dangerous as some assembly members fear, the consequences will fall upon your shoulders." Zara nodded, her heart racing with both anticipation and apprehension. This crisis could either cement humanity's status as a developing species or finally prove their true potential. As she left the chamber to prepare for the mission, she couldn't help but wonder if the assembly was ready to face the truth about humanity, not just their strength, but their fundamental drive to protect and preserve life in all its forms. The real test was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The observation deck of the assembly vessel, Stellar Wind, offered an unobstructed view of the devastation. Nova Haven, once a thriving human colony, now lay silent beneath its protective dome. Beside it, the Krylonian outpost, an assembly protectorate, showed similar signs of attack. No signs of life registered on any scanners. "Your species chose a harsh world to colonize," First Speaker Nixus observed, his scales rippling with shades of gray. "These atmospheric conditions would kill most beings." Zara studied the readouts on her datapad. "That's exactly why we chose it. Humanity thrives on challenges." She turned to face the towering alien. "The real question is why anyone would attack both a human colony and an assembly outpost simultaneously." Before Nixus could respond, Lieutenant Raven Drake's voice crackled over the comm. "Dr. Blackwood, you need to see this. We're picking up unusual energy signatures from both settlements." In the ship's tactical center, Raven, a former military strategist turned colonial defense expert, had transformed the room into a command hub. Holographic displays showed detailed scans of both settlements, with strange energy patterns pulsing through their infrastructure. These patterns, Raven pointed to the fluctuating signals. They're not random. Someone's deliberately interfering with both colonies' environmental systems. Nixus's scales shifted to a deep blue of concern. The Krylonian settlement's atmospheric processors are highly advanced. Few species possess the technology to affect them. But they're not destroyed, Zara noted, studying the data. They're being reprogrammed. Someone's trying to alter the environmental conditions inside both colonies. Her eyes widened with realization. They're not attacking the colonies. They're transforming them. A new alert flashed across the displays. Movement detected within Nova Haven's dome. "Survivors. We need to mount a rescue operation," Zara declared, already reaching for her environmental suit. "Impossible," Nixus countered. "The atmospheric alterations make it too dangerous. Even if your environmental suits could withstand the conditions, we don't know what's waiting inside." Raven pulled up more tactical data. "He's right about the risks, but wrong about it being impossible. Look at these readings. The environmental changes are following a pattern. We can predict the safe zones and time our entry." This is precisely the impulsive behavior that concerns the assembly. Nixus's scales flickered with frustration. "You cannot simply." "We can, and we will," Zara interrupted. "While we debate, people are dying in there. Both humans and Krylonians need our help. This is your chance to see humanity's true nature, First Speaker. We don't just survive. We protect." The rescue team assembled quickly. Zara, Raven, and a small group of human specialists. Their environmental suits, designed for extreme conditions, had been modified based on Raven's calculations of the shifting atmospheric patterns. "Remember," Raven briefed the team, "we have narrow windows between atmospheric shifts. Miss one, and no suit will protect you." We split into 2 teams, one for each settlement. Priority is survivor recovery and data collection. We need to understand what we're dealing with. From the ship's command center, Nixus watched the humans prepare with growing fascination. His scales shifted through colors of confusion and curiosity as they efficiently coordinated their efforts, adapting their plans and equipment with remarkable speed. The descent to the surface was treacherous. Wind patterns had changed dramatically, forcing the shuttle pilots to compensate constantly. Yet they landed precisely in the predicted safe zones, their timing perfect between atmospheric pulses. Inside Nova Haven's dome, the scene was otherworldly. The once familiar colonial architecture now stood warped by whatever force had invaded. The air itself seemed to shimmer with strange energies. Life signs detected, Raven reported, consulting her scanner. Multiple signatures, both human and Krylonian. They've gathered in the Central Environmental Control Facility. Smart. Zara nodded. That would be the most heavily shielded location. She activated her comm. First speaker, are you receiving our data feed? Affirmative. Nixus replied, his voice tight with tension. These readings, they're unlike anything in assembly records. The team moved carefully through the transformed colony, timing their movements between waves of atmospheric distortion. They found the first survivors barricaded in the Environmental Control Center's lower levels, a mixed group of humans and Krylonians who had worked together to survive. The attack came without warning. Colonial Administrator Thomas Chin reported, his voice weak but determined. But it wasn't conventional. The attackers, they weren't trying to destroy. They were studying us, testing how we'd adapt to changing conditions. A Krylonian scientist, their crystalline form dulled by exposure, added, they seemed particularly interested in how our species would interact under stress, whether we would turn on each other or cooperate. Zara and Raven exchanged glances. This wasn't a simple attack. It was an experiment. But who would have the technology and motivation to test both human and assembly species this way? The answer came suddenly and violently. As they began evacuating survivors, new energy signatures appeared throughout both colonies. The atmospheric distortions intensified, and something emerged from the shifting air itself. First speaker. Zara's voice was tense but controlled. Are you seeing this? On the command deck, Nix's scales had turned pure white. A sign of shock. Impossible. They were supposed to be extinct. The forms taking shape around them were unlike anything in known space. They seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in some other dimension, their bodies shifting between states of matter. The true test was about to begin, and humanity's response would either confirm the Assembly's fears or revolutionize the galaxy's understanding of their potential. The beings surrounding them defied conventional physics. Their forms rippled like liquid metal one moment, dispersed like gas the next, all while maintaining a vaguely humanoid shape. Zara's scientific mind raced to categorize what she was seeing, even as her survival instincts screamed for action. The metamorphs. Nix's voice crackled through the comm, heavy with ancient knowledge. A species we thought lost to time. They were sealed away eons ago for their experiments on other species. Raven's tactical display filled with shifting data as she analyzed the entities. They're manipulating the environment at a quantum level. That's how they've been transforming the colonies. A voice echoed through their minds, a collective consciousness speaking directly into their thoughts. Your species intrigues us. Both human adaptability and Krylonian resilience, such potential for our great work. Administrator Chen stepped forward, despite his weakened state. Your work has killed dozens of colonists, both human and Krylonian. Acceptable losses for evolutionary advancement. The collective voice responded. We seek to create the perfect adaptive species. Those who survive our tests become stronger. Zara felt rage building inside her, but kept her voice steady. You don't understand either of our species. True strength isn't just about survival. It's about protecting others. About choosing to help even when it puts you at risk. The metamorph's forms swirled with patterns of light, indicating curiosity or perhaps amusement. Prove it. Show us this. Protection instinct. Survive our ultimate test. The environment within the dome began changing rapidly. The air itself seemed to crystallize in places, while turning corrosive in others. Gravity fluctuated wildly, and spatial distortions created impossible geometries. Everyone into the Environmental Control Center. Raven commanded, her military training taking over. We can reinforce the shields. But Zara saw the trap. No, that's what they expect. They want to see if we'll abandon the weaker ones to save ourselves. She turned to the survivors. Form teams. Strong help weak. Nobody gets left behind. What followed was a desperate race against constantly changing physics. Humans and Krylonians worked together, adapting strategies on the fly. When gravity failed, they'd formed human chains to pull each other through spaces where up and down had lost meaning. When the air turned toxic, they shared breathing apparatus, timing their movements between safe zones. From the assembly ship, Nixus watched in astonishment as his scales cycled through colors of disbelief and growing respect. The humans didn't just fight for survival, they actively worked to protect the Krylonians, whose crystalline forms were more vulnerable to the environmental changes. Fascinating, the Metamorph's collective voice echoed. You sacrifice efficiency for mutual preservation. Yet somehow, this makes you more effective, not less. Raven had coordinated with the ship's tactical systems, using the Metamorph's own environmental modifications against them. Every change you make, we adapt to. Not just physically, but strategically. That's humanity's true strength. A group of survivors was cut off by a spatial distortion, the corridor between them and safety turning into a twisted knot of impossible angles. Without hesitation, Zura plotted a course through the warped space. The crystals in the Krylonians' bodies, she called out. They refract spatial distortions. If we coordinate our movements with their natural frequencies. The survivors understood immediately. Humans and Krylonians moved in perfect sync, using the crystalline being's natural properties to navigate the twisted space. It was a solution neither species could have achieved alone. This is what you don't understand, Zara addressed the Metamorphs, while helping an injured Krylonian through the distortion. Evolution isn't just about becoming stronger or more adaptable. It's about learning to work together, to combine different strengths. The Metamorph's forms pulsed with new patterns. Perhaps, we have been approaching our great work from the wrong perspective. Nix's voice came through the comm, filled with a new tone, something close to awe. Dr. Blackwood, what your people are demonstrating. It goes beyond mere survival or adaptation. This is something the Assembly has never seen. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the colony. The Metamorph's forms began to concentrate, gathering into a singular swirling mass. We have seen enough. Your species presents possibilities we had not considered. The environmental distortions began to stabilize, but Zara sensed this wasn't over. The Metamorphs weren't admitting defeat, they were preparing for something else. Something bigger. First speaker, she called out, I need you to trust us. What's about to happen will either prove everything the Assembly fears about humanity, or everything I've been trying to tell you about our true nature. The Metamorphs' collective consciousness pressed against their minds again, stronger now. Are you prepared for the final test? To prove that this protective instinct, this cooperation, can succeed where pure evolution has failed. Zara looked at the survivors, humans and Krylonians supporting each other, adapting and working together against impossible odds. She met Raven's determined gaze and nodded. We're ready, not just to survive your test, but to show you a better way. The real question is, are you ready to learn? The air crackled with energy as the Metamorph's final test began, and with it, the chance to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their ability to survive, but in their unwavering drive to protect and elevate all life around them. The Metamorph's final test manifested as a complete restructuring of reality within Nova Haven's dome. Space itself folded and unfolded like origami, creating impossible pathways between pockets of survivable environment. The colony had become a maze of quantum uncertainty, where the laws of physics changed from one moment to the next. The nature of existence is adaptation. The Metamorph's collective voice resonated. Navigate our labyrinth. Find the quantum core. Prove your species' worth. Raven's tactical displays sparked and shifted as they tried to map the unmappable. The environmental sensors can't make sense of it. We're flying blind. No, Zora replied, studying the shifting patterns. Look at how the Krylonians react to each change. Their crystalline structures resonate with the quantum fluctuations. They can sense the safe paths. Administrator Chen, though exhausted, managed a grim smile. And humans have the adaptability to navigate them. Together, we might have a chance. What followed was an unprecedented collaboration. The Krylonians, their bodies humming with quantum frequencies, could detect stable routes through the chaos. Humans, with their quick thinking and physical adaptability, could guide groups through these temporary safe zones. From the assembly ship, Nixus watched with his scales shifting through colors never before seen in his species. Impossible. They're not just surviving. They're mastering the metamorph's own domain. The journey through the quantum maze pushed both species to their limits. When gravity inverted, humans formed living bridges to help Krylonians cross. When reality fragmented into parallel possibilities, Krylonian sensory abilities kept the groups synchronized across dimensional barriers. First speaker, Zara called through the fluctuating comm signal. Are you understanding what you're seeing? This isn't just about human capability. It's about what becomes possible when species work together as equals. A particularly violent quantum surge separated part of their group, trapping them in a pocket of warped spacetime. Without hesitation, Raven calculated a rescue trajectory that seemed to defy logic. The crystalline resonance. She explained quickly, if we match our movements to their frequency, we can phase through the quantum barrier. But the timing has to be perfect. The rescue operation that followed demonstrated everything Zora had tried to explain to the assembly. Humans and Krylonians moved in perfect synchronization, their different biological properties combining to achieve what should have been impossible. The metamorph's consciousness pressed against their minds, curious and evaluating. You utilize weakness as strength. Limitations become advantages. This defies evolutionary logic. No, Zora countered, helping another survivor through a quantum threshold. This is evolution's next step, not just adapting ourselves, but adapting how we work together. They found the quantum core at the heart of the labyrinth, a swirling vortex of pure possibility. The metamorph's forms gathered around it, their patterns shifting faster than eyes could follow. The core can stabilize the colony. Raven's tactical analysis flashed across their displays. But interfacing with it, the quantum exposure would be fatal. Before anyone could stop him, Administrator Chen stepped forward. Not for everyone. The radiation treatments I received fighting the initial changes, they've already saturated my cells with quantum particles. Thomas, no, Zora started, but he cut her off with a gentle smile. This is what we do, isn't it? Protect others. Find solutions no one else can see. He turned to the nearest Krylonian. Help me sync with the frequencies. Together, we can stabilize the core. What happened next would be debated in assembly halls for centuries. Chen and the Krylonian approached the quantum core, their very atoms beginning to resonate with its frequencies. The metamorph's forms swirled around them, no longer testing but observing in what seemed like wonder. From the ship, Nix's voice carried new understanding. All this time, we thought we were protecting younger species from themselves. But perhaps we were preventing the next stage of galactic evolution. The quantum core pulsed with new energy as Chen and the Krylonian made contact. Their forms began to blur, not dissolving but transforming. The metamorph's consciousness reached out one final time. We sought to create the perfect adaptive species through isolation and trial. You have shown us a different path. Evolution through cooperation. Through protection. Reality rippled outward from the core. The quantum labyrinth began to stabilize, but not by returning to normal. Instead, it transformed into something new, a hybrid environment where both human and Krylonian biology could thrive naturally. Chen and the Krylonian emerged changed, not lost or destroyed, but evolved into something that bridged both species. Their sacrifice had become a transformation, proof that evolution didn't have to mean losing oneself, but could mean becoming more together. As the colony stabilized around them, Zura looked up at the dome where the assembly ship hovered. "Now do you understand, first speaker? Humanity isn't dangerous because we're too aggressive or too adaptable. We're catalysts for change because we instinctively seek to protect and elevate all life around us." The implications of what they'd witnessed would shake the foundations of the assembly's entire worldview. But for now, as humans and Krylonians worked together to rebuild their shared colony, a new understanding was already taking root. The assembly chamber looked different now. Where once rigid hierarchical seating had separated species by their evolutionary status, now the space had been transformed into concentric circles, symbolizing unity and interconnection. 3 months had passed since the events at Nova Haven, and the galaxy would never be the same. Zara stood at the center of the chamber. But this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood Raven, Administrator Chen in his new hybrid form, and representatives from both the Krylonian and Metamorph societies. First Speaker Nixus presided over the session, his scales now permanently displaying previously unseen patterns of iridescence, a physical manifestation of how deeply the recent events had changed him. "We gather today," Nixus' voice carried through the chamber, "to acknowledge that our understanding of evolution, adaptation, and civilization itself has been fundamentally challenged. The events at Nova Haven have forced us to confront our own prejudices about what constitutes advancement." The holographic displays activated, showing footage from the quantum labyrinth. Species throughout the chamber watched in fascination as humans and Krylonians worked together to overcome impossible obstacles. The images shifted to show the transformed Nova Haven colony, now a thriving example of hybrid architecture and culture. "What we witnessed," Zara addressed the assembly, "wasn't just about survival or adaptation. It was proof that the next step in galactic evolution isn't about individual species becoming stronger or more advanced. It's about learning to combine our strengths to protect and elevate each other." The Metamorph representatives' form swirled with patterns of agreement. "For eons, we sought to force evolution through trial and isolation. We were wrong. The humans showed us that true advancement comes through cooperation and mutual protection." Administrator Chen stepped forward, his hybrid form shifting slightly as he moved. Part human, part crystalline, yet somehow more than both. "Look at what we've achieved at Nova Haven. The quantum transformation didn't just create a space where different species could survive. It created an environment where we could truly thrive together." Raven activated her tactical displays, sharing data from the colony. Crime rates, 0. Scientific breakthroughs, up 300%. Creative and artistic output, unprecedented. When species work together as equals, we don't just solve problems, we transcend them. The assembly erupted in discussion, but this time the tone was different from the fear and suspicion of the past. Species that had long been classified as developing or primitive were speaking up, sharing their own experiences of cooperation and mutual growth. Therefore, Nixus announced, his scales shimmering, "I propose a fundamental restructuring of the assembly itself. No more hierarchies based on evolutionary status. No more protective oversight of younger species. Instead, we create a true collaborative council where each species contributes its unique strengths to our shared future." The Metamorphs had already begun sharing their quantum manipulation technology, but with a new purpose. Instead of using it to test and challenge other species, they now work to create spaces where different biologies could interact and thrive together. The transformed Nova Haven colony became a template for similar projects throughout the galaxy. "But this is just the beginning," Zora continued. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our adaptability or our resilience. It's our ability to see potential in others, to instinctively reach out and help, to protect and nurture growth in all its forms." As if to demonstrate this point, the chamber's architecture began to shift. The Metamorphs, working in concert with human architects and Krylonian crystal shapers, transformed the space into something that accommodated all species comfortably while celebrating their differences. We proposed the establishment of the Galactic Cooperative. Raven outlined the initiative, a new organization focused not on overseeing or controlling species development, but on facilitating collaboration and mutual protection. The vote was unanimous. The old assembly structure was dissolved, replaced by something new and dynamic. Research centers would be established throughout the galaxy, following the Nova Haven model. Species that had once been kept apart would now be encouraged to work together, combining their unique traits and perspectives. As the session concluded, Zara found herself on one of the chamber's observation decks, watching ships from dozens of worlds moving through the celestial lanes. Nixus joined her, his scales reflecting the starlight. "You were right," he admitted. "We feared humanity's potential for change, never realizing that this very trait would show us a better path. Your species' instinct to protect others, even at great cost to yourselves. It's not a weakness or a primitive trait. It's the most advanced characteristic we've ever encountered." Zara smiled, watching a group of young metamorphs working with human and Krylonian scientists below, their combined efforts creating something entirely new. "We never wanted to dominate or to prove our superiority. We just wanted to help, to protect, to make things better for everyone." The transformed Nova Haven colony became known as the first Nexus, but it wouldn't be the last. Across the galaxy, species that had long been separated by the Assembly's hierarchical structure began reaching out to each other, creating their own hybrid communities and collaborative projects. Administrator Chen, leading a group of students from various species through the quantum transformed spaces, had become living proof that evolution didn't have to mean losing one's identity. His hybrid form represented not a sacrifice, but an expansion of what was possible when different species came together. As the first wave of new cooperative projects launched across the galaxy, Zara realized that humanity had finally found its true role in the cosmic community, not as conquerors or subjects, but as catalysts, helping to break down barriers, encourage cooperation, and protect the amazing diversity of life throughout the stars. The age of isolation was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And it all started because the galaxy had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, not their ability to survive, but their unwavering drive to help others thrive.